open, let me make this bigger. Okay, much better, I think. Okay, so we're going to talk about Vata, balancing specifically a Vata woman through Ahara and Yoga. And Dr. Priyanka just talked about the wonderful gunas of Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and how to look at each dosha through the Mahabhutas. If you can always use the Mahabhutas as your beacon or as an anchor point, I'm using nautical terms this morning, I don't know why, but if you can use the 5 Mahabhutas, then you can always steer in the right direction. So you can always relate the doshas that way and remember what the qualities are. Okay, so let's begin. So Vata dosha, and again, repetition is key. So you're going to hear it over and over again, but that's how it'll stick. Like Manjulali ji just said that you just can't take 1 hour, a 1 hour course and learn it. It's okay. You have to keep repeating it. So the Vata dosha again is a combination of empty space and air. So that's Vata dosha. The human body is a combination of all the 5 elements, right? Ether, which is empty space, air, fire, water, and earth. And that's from most subtle to most gross. So Vata, you have that picture of the dandelions floating away, the seeds, shows you the lightness of Vata. Fire and water together make Pitta, and water and earth make Kapha. So when you look at someone, a typical Vata person, Vata has irregularity as its constant. So a Vata person will be either quite tall or they'll be shorter than average, and they'll have thin arms and legs. There's also, because of its dryness and lightness, it dries out the body. There's a tendency towards low body weight and body fat. Vata people often have difficulty putting on weight. They're often, if they're trying to weight lift or trying to bulk up with powders and protein shakes, and they get frustrated a little bit sometimes when they can't put on that bulk. They're lean and strong, but they're not bulky. There's a poor development of the muscles, poor circulation, prominent veins, and the irregularity, as I said. Imagine wind. Wind never sits still. Air never sits still. It always moves. So similarly, the digestion is variable. Sometimes they're hungry. Sometimes they forget to eat. But it tends towards, as it goes more, as the food moves into the colon, where Vata presides, it's quite dry, and their stool is constipated. There's more water taken out of that fecal matter, and so when they defecate, it's usually dry, they're constipated, or they're not able to go. So that's Vata dosha. So kind of a review of the previous hour. Physical characteristics of Vata dosha: they're restless, often fidgety, they're active, they're quick to act. They also have, they're fast thinking, quick-witted. They think of comebacks really fast. They're expressive, creative, they have an excellent imagination. They think outside of the box. They're, they have that flexibility. They're very adaptable mentally. Their moods are fluctuating, but they forgive and forget. They move on very quickly. They don't kind of sit there and stew. They move on. They may get angry, but then they forgive or they let go. They're quite emotionally sensitive. They're prone to fear and anxiety. They often are nervous, just sort of like that nervous, shifty, fidgety energy they have, and they're prone to nervous disorders. And these, by nervous, meaning pertaining to the nerves, the actual nerves. Okay. So when Vata is imbalanced, which can happen at any time, Vata people are more vulnerable, however, when the weather is cold and dry, because like increases like. So in the fall and winter seasons, and when the seasons change, kind of between seasons, and these junctions are called sandhis, ritu sandhis, between the junction of one season to the next, there's that irregularity. When Vatas travel or lose their daily routine, right? Especially air travel, because imagine, as Dr. Lard says, you are on a plane that's going 550 miles an hour through the sky. First of all, you're up in the atmosphere with where it's rare. The cabin is pressurized, but not to the extent of the Earth's pressure. And you're moving at a fast speed. You're going through several time zones. So you can imagine, if you're a Vata person, how that's going to aggravate Vata. Vatas need a routine. They really need that routine to anchor them. Otherwise, they're lost. And then when we enter the Vata time in life, so older, when our senior years are upon us, then that is the Vata time of life. So Kapha being early life, Pitta being middle life, and Vata being towards the end of life, as we come to the end. And during menstruation too, different cycles, you have imbalanced Vata. Again, Vata imbalances anxiety, indecision, insomnia, constipation, dry hair, dry skin, exhaustion, lack of appetite, and weight loss. So again, always take it back to the Pancha Mahabhutas. Think of Vata as empty space or ether, depending on the author you read, they'll use either term. And air. And think about air being irregular and rough and subtle and cold and mobile. And you'll come back to that'll bring you to the description or the characteristics of Vata. Long-term Vata imbalances, again, chronic anxiety, chronic insomnia, migraine headaches, although that can also be a Pitta problem, arthritis, and this is a broad term. There's rheumatoid arthritis, there's osteoarthritis, but problems with the joints. Diseases associated with elimination, we talked about constipation above, and menstrual imbalances. So how do we restore balance to Vata? So we are going to use in our talk here Ahara and Yoga, okay? Oh, sorry, is that the right slide? Okay, yes. The key to managing the doshas is to care for Vata. Proper control of Vata brings natural order to all the workings of the body and mind. Vata, often you'll read in literature or commentaries on Ayurveda, is the queen of the doshas. It's the one that moves the other two, Pitta and Kapha. And most disorders in the human body arise from Vata imbalance, followed by Pitta and then last by Kapha. So Vata dosha governs movement in the body and mind. And the motivation behind Pitta and Kapha. So Pitta and Kapha are called Pangu, lame in Ayurveda. So they move, Vata dosha moves Pitta and Kapha. They're not capable of inherently, of motion. So Vata is seen as the leader of the three. Vata can lead Pitta thus and Kapha into imbalance and therefore cause disease. More diseases are associated with Vata than Pitta and Kapha combined. We live in a society that aggravates Vata, right? Especially the more modern and quote unquote we get. Rapid changes, cars, deadlines, stress. I was just thinking of how my childhood was so free of the internet, and so there was no internet, and there was yes, things got done, and maybe not as quickly as we want them to do now, but it wasn't so constant. The emails, the texts, and time something comes to us electronically, we're responsible for it, right? If a text comes, the ball's in our court. We got to answer it because someone's waiting for a response. So we are just getting poked and prodded from all sides with all this electronic bombardment, including the radiation and the waves in the air. So all this technology aggravates Vata. It keeps us anxious all the time. We're glued to our devices, cars, deadlines, travel, stress, stimulating the eyes and ears, right? Screens, computers, TVs, movies, cell phones, social media, all of this is so chaotic that, you literally have to unplug just to calm the Vata down. And even then you're worried about, well, am I missing an email? Am I missing a text? So we must heal Vata first to ensure our lives are moving in a balanced and healthy direction. So that is the key to health, one of the keys to health. So how can we do this? Ahara. Ahara is diet in Sanskrit. So how do we heal ourselves? And why is ahara important? Because it's vital for promoting health and happiness. Food is eventually what makes this physical body we call Annamaya Kosha. It is literally the food sheath. The body has 5 layers, Panchakosha, and the most superficial one, or the gross tangible one, is called the Annamaya Kosha. It's made up of the food we eat. The food nourishes the physical body and also, in turn, the soul and the mind. The food helps restore and maintain doshic balance, again, in the body and mind. Diet is critical in the disease state. Many times the wrong foods become the cause of the disease, and the right foods become the treatment. So we have to also, when we look at our client, we have to honor the uniqueness of each individual and prescribe a diet that belongs, that is compatible with their current disorder, but also their prakriti. So it's a balancing act for us as practitioners, right? So when you want to balance Vata through ahara, we favor foods that are warm, right? Opposite of Vata. Vata is cold, so we give them warm foods. Vata is dry, so we give oily foods. Vata is subtle and light, so we give heavy foods. Liquid foods, cooked foods, so no raw foods, no raw salads, no cold raw salads with sour vinegar-based dressings, right? That is something that Vatas reach for, but they shouldn't. Vatas out of balance, rather, would reach for imbalancing foods. They will crave foods that are more imbalancing when their Vata is out of balance. So we give them these heavy, warm foods. We don't want them to have dry, light, and cold foods. Vatas should have sweet, sour, and salty tastes. They need to reduce their pungent, bitter, and astringent taste. And we are going to talk about ahara later, so I'm not going to dwell on this. But for example, sweet is earth and water, right? So each taste, each rasa, each of the 6 tastes also has a mahabhutik composition. So we have to look at that as well. And when you see the elements in these tastes, you give the opposite taste based on the dosha imbalance. So sweet is going to be heavy and earthy, and so that's going to balance Vata. Pungent, bitter, astringent are all light, and they will increase Vata. You avoid stimulants, so caffeine is bad, nicotine is bad, anything that stimulates Vata is bad. So practice good eating habits with a regular and consistent routine. 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and make sure it's at the same time each day, not skipping meals, okay, especially breakfast. Lunch should be had around at around noontime, or when the sun is at its highest point in the sky. That is when our internal Agni is the strongest. So that's when your body can handle the heaviest meal of the day. So if you're going to have a heavy meal, make it lunchtime. And that's for all people, all doshas. Eat a lighter meal for dinner so we don't overwhelm the Agni. And the last meal should be finished 3 hours before you go to bed, so you can digest it. You're not lying down right away. So for Vata, fruits, in Western nutrition, all fruits are good for everyone, right? It's 5 fruits a day. You know, for those of you in the United States, that's the slogan, 5 fruits a day, or 5 servings of fruits a day. But in Ayurveda, we believe that fruits are recommended based on a number of characteristics, such as whether they are raw, cooked, ripe, or unripe. Because the way you process a fruit, whether you dry it, or you pickle it, or you powder it, or whatever, you cook it, stew it, that's going to change its characteristics. So raw fruit should only be consumed in the afternoon hours or PM hours. Avoid eating in the morning. So in the PM only, afternoon, evening, not in the morning. And if you have Tikshnagni, that should be Tikshna, Tikshna, Tikshnagni, which is high Agni or high digestive fire, then only cooked fruit should be consumed. And this is also for Vata as well. Cooked fruit is better than raw fruit in general. So for Vata, as you look at this list here, cooked apples, applesauce, apples that are apricots, avocados. Avocados are oily and dense, right? Ripe bananas are sweet berries, cherries, coconut, dates, figs. These are heavy, sweet fruits. All of these are good for Vata, right? I'm sure I don't see the chat, but someone's asking, well, how come they can have, never mind, I'm getting ahead of myself. Fruits not recommended for Vata. Generally, most dry fruits or unripe fruits. So apples that are raw, crisp and crunchy and raw. Unripe bananas, that if you have an unripe banana, it makes that astringent kind of feeling in the mouth. It kind of makes your tongue sort of pucker, your mouth sort of pucker. And it feels funny on the tongue. So that's that astringency of that unripe banana, and that drives up Vata. Cranberries, kind of the same thing. They have that drying flavor. Dry dates, even if you look at a dry date, it looks very Vata, right? Versus the plump, fresh date. Figs, again, dry figs with that tough skin and the crunchy seeds. It's just not good for Vata. Pears, pomegranates is good for Pitta, but not Vata. Dry prunes. Well, this is kind of funny because prunes are inherently dried plums, but just prunes alone are not going to help Vata. We give a lot of prunes to people in Western medicine for constipation, but it's important that the prunes be soaked, right? So just dry prunes isn't going to help. So prunes that have sort of been rehydrated or soaked, those are better. Raisins, again, should be soaked. Watermelon is not good for Vata. What I was going to say is, someone might say, well, watermelon is watery and juicy. Why is that not good for Vata? So I don't want to talk about all of this right now because we have a lot of Ahara units coming up, and we'll talk about food in more detail. This is just to give you a flavor, no pun intended, of the foods that are good for the doshas. Okay, so we'll move on. Vegetables for Vata, again, choose organic, right? We know that, to reduce pesticides, etc. The prana, or the life energy, is highest when the vegetable or fruit is ripe. So some vegetables are diuretics, such as celery, lettuce, mustard, dandelion, watercress, broccoli, ginger, and blue potatoes. So these can increase Vata. So if you're gonna put them in your diet, then cook them into soups or broths. Okay, so make sure that they're in water and cooked and softened. Vegetables should be eaten cooked. Beets, carrots, all of these, asparagus, cucumber, sweet potatoes are good choices, and they should be cooked, not raw. They're all good for Vata, but they should be cooked. In moderate quantities, you can cook with ghee or oil and Vata pacifying spices the following vegetables: peas, green leafy vegetables, they should be chopped small, and the thick fibrous parts should be thrown away or discarded, or maybe you can keep them. Often I don't throw them away. I never throw it away. I would either put it into a broth or make a vegetable broth or compost them or something. Broccoli, cauliflower, celery, zucchini, and potatoes. Now you'd think broccoli and cauliflower are gaseous and therefore would aggravate Vata, and they do, but that's why we cook them, and we use spices too. Okay, so that we don't have the side effects of these cruciferous vegetables, which can leave people gassy. We avoid sprouts, cabbage, and raw salads. So again, there's a list on the side, the vegetables okay for Vata, and the vegetables which are okay if cooked in ghee and spices on that side. I won't read through the list because you can always come back to the presentation, okay? So with when cooking with spices, always choose organic again, seeds first, dried and fresh spices second, powdered spices last, vegetables and ingredients. So this is sort of if you're going to make a what we call tempering in Indian cooking, in which you you put hot oil in the pan or ghee, and then you add spices. So there's an order for adding spices to the oil, and this is sort of the formula to do it. There are many ways of cooking, but this is one way. And the reason is you add powdered spices last is because they burn quickly. So that's one thing you have to master when you make Ayurvedic cooking. If you go to the college's website, you can click on videos. There are YouTube videos on how to do just this. So I'll let you guys check out those videos on YouTube, in which Atulji and Manakaji are cooking, and they teach you how to layer the spices. And also cooking workshops that the college holds are really helpful. So great spices for Vata are cumin, fennel, cardamom, coriander, black pepper, turmeric, cinnamon, ginger, salt, cloves, mustard seed. Again, all cooked, not raw, but you put them in the oil. For Vata, from an Ayurvedic perspective, oils are used internally and externally. Oftentimes you'll see the terms oleation, internal oleation, external oleation. So internally, oils are used in the preparation of foods and to increase the absorption, or carry the herbs. They're vehicles to help our body absorb those herbs and the molecules of food. A lot of these herbs have fat-soluble chemicals. So when you for example, if you mustard seeds, when we cook in hot oil, the reason why we do that first, we put the oil in the pan and then the seeds, is because many of those compounds are fat soluble. So the oil, the ghee, or the whatever's in the pan, the lipid, will extract those molecules and flavor the food, so it's more flavorful, but also easily absorbed by the body. So for Vata, you should not be using canola oil, safflower, soy, corn, or coconut. The recommended oils instead are ghee, sesame oil, avocado oil, flax oil, mustard oil. Now, avocado oil is not is more of a modern day. It's not an Ayurvedic oil, but this has been adapted to the American supermarket. So if you have to pick an oil for Vata, avocado, let's say, would be better than soy oil. Okay. Grains are composed of the earth element, so that's why grains are, they're bulking. If you take a cow, sadly the analogy is, and even if it's pasture fed, cows are then taken to the feedlot to slaughter, and before slaughter, and in the feedlot they are fed grains to fatten them up. So it's a sad, it's not a good example, but it drives the point home that grains are because of the earth element, they bulk up the body. So grains, because of the earth element, they're opposite, right, in characteristic to Vata. They give heaviness to Vata. So they decrease Vata. There's certain grains recommended for Vata: whole wheat, oats, quinoa, and rice. Not recommended are rye, buckwheat, barley, and millet. So you have grains that are diuretic, like the barley, corn, rye, buckwheat. So they're not recommended. But the ones that give you bulk are basmati, brown rice, whole wheats, and oats. When cooking grains, do not deep fry. It results in the accumulation of ama in the body. In fact, deep frying is not good in general. We do deep fry some things, and that's okay once in a while, but you don't want to deep fry in general, because the oils also break down and become toxic, and they change. Don't eat grains with cooked or steamed vegetables. Don't mix acidic or raw food together with the grains. Now, this whole concept of how to eat food and what to eat together and what not to eat, how to combine foods, is also part of the Ahar unit later. So I don't want to overwhelm you now with it. And this concept of poor eating is called Viruddha Ahar. So that's to come. So I won't explain this right now. For Vata, we don't consume breads containing yeast, because that fermentation adds space and air to the bread, which increases Vata. So example, like sourdough bread or any yeasty bread is going to give that Vata person more gas. So as an alternative, tortilla, roti, flat breads. Okay, so breads that are have no yeast in them. Vatas should also be having legumes in their diet. These are a rich source of protein. There are some that are not recommended, which are chickpeas. They're gassy. Soybeans. But ones that are recommended are mung beans, tofu, black and red lentils, red and yellow dal, and adzuki, red beans. So when Vatas have legumes, they should be eating them, but not too many. A little bit is fine. Any protein produces gas, right? Nitrogenous waste. So this gas makes consumption of these beans and dals tricky for Vata. So therefore, the way the trick is, the strategy is to soak them in water overnight preferentially, but also you can do it an hour before cooking. And then you boil them, and then you use certain spices like hing, asafoetida, that all of these things serve as strategy to reduce that intestinal gas. Split legumes are easier, faster to cook, and they cook up softer. So that's another trick. What page are we? 16, 11. Okay, let me see my time here. Okay, nuts and seeds for Vata. Let's talk about these guys. They're wonderful for balancing Vata dosha because they pacify the mind. They're sattvic in quality. And nuts, again, are heavy and oily, right? So they're good in moderation, all of them. We tell Vatas, you can go nuts with the nuts. To ease digestion, you can soak in water first before eating. So, in moderation, again. Examples that are good are hemp seeds, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, flax seeds, almonds, pistachios. Beverages for Vata. Let's talk about beverages. They're the ones that are therapeutic and nutritious are those that are not processed, such as processed juices, sodas, which are carbonated. Again, think of the air element. And sodas are just bad for you anyway. And fruit smoothies. So smoothies are also nightmarish for the Ayurvedic practitioner. And it's funny because every time I do this workshop up here in Northern California, and I talk about smoothies, everyone gets offended. Oh my gosh, smoothies! But no, I just had a green smoothie this morning, and I challenge you to find a more healthy breakfast. It had hemp and spirulina and whey protein and CBD oil, and I mean their smoothies have everything. So when you tell people that they can't have their smoothies, they're really upset because you've just turned their world upside down and inside out. Beverages, let's see, it does include, sorry, soups, lassi, herbal syrup. So these are good for Vata. Dairy products pacify Vata as well. So boil milk before you drink it and drink it warm. You can add a pinch of cardamom or dry ginger in it. And again, don't drink milk with a meal. So dairy products are generally good. Of course, now we'll talk more in details. Certain dairy products from certain animals are good for or better for one dosha versus the other. So you tell one person, hey, you can have goat milk. You tell the other person you should have cow's milk. Again, I'm making a general statement about dairy products for Vata. It's good. Water. Many people are chronically dehydrated because of caffeine. It's amazing how much caffeine people drink, right? Black coffee, they're on their fifth cup of coffee at work sometimes, and I'm just amazed. And soda in my patients, oftentimes just to get them to quit soda is so difficult. It's an addiction. So Vata dosha people need to consume more water than the other two doshas because remember, Kapha has fire. Kapha has earth and water, and Pitta has fire and water. So they have inherently more water than Vata. Vata is dry to the bone. So Vata really needs to be drinking warm water, not cold, not ice water, not mineral sparkling water. You can these days buy those, you can make soda water at home. We can plug in the machine. I won't name the brand, but you can buy that machine and make sodas. So now people make sodas. It's crazy. I have two friends who bought that machine, and they just now they only have carbonated water. Even their tap water is carbonated. So you can imagine over time what that's going to do to the body. So water should be warm because as Dr. Priyanka mentioned in her talk earlier, that warm water is cleansing. It's calming. It increases Agni. It decreases toxins. Let's balance Vata through yoga. How do we do that? Vatas are the most in need of asana practice because it helps alleviate the accumulation of Vata from the back and bones, where Vata can easily lodge itself. It massages the muscles and joints. It relieves tension. It balances and soothes the body and mind, and it alleviates stiffness and dryness in the tissues, bones, and joints. But asanas should be slow and should be calming, and the poses should be held longer. The Vatas want to rush through everything, but they need to take it easy. So practice carefully. Why? Because Vatas often, because of their low body weight, have inadequate cushioning of joints and nerves, and they're usually on the dry, dehydrated side. So you want the movements to be slow and graceful and fluid. Their muscles are also tend to be less developed, so you want their muscles to be, again, stretched and held in longer positions. Vatas are fast and flexible, so they're good at bending and stretching, but they're prone to injury because suddenly they make abrupt movements, especially from one pose to the next. So they'll pull a muscle. So take their, they can often be, taking their practice to the extreme. So have them slow down. That's the key with Vatas, to have them slow down. So give them poses that increase the qualities of warmth and stability, poses that are grounding. These reestablish health and wellness. Their inhalations should be slow, warm and nourishing, and through the nose to, again, warm and humidify the air. Long exhalations cool and disperse energy, depleting Vata. So their inhalations should be longer. Direct breath to below the navel, that helps promote grounding, so diaphragmatic breathing. And in any asana, the hands and feet should be grounded. They should be on the ground touching the floor to give stability. The gaze is to the level or below the horizon, which also promotes stability and brings that Vata to the ground. It calms the mind. Upward gazes, turning the head up, creates dizziness, lightness, and increases intensity. That will imbalance Vata. So the head should be down or level. And then fix a gaze on an unwavering point. That also gives you an anchor point. That also promotes that stability, that sense of being stable. Favor a slow, fluid, and gentle pace that encourages internal fluidity, maintains inner focus. It soothes Vata. Quick movements imbalance Vata and create a racing mind. Right? If you look at a hummingbird, you look at the quick moments, the movements they make. They hover and they're beating their wings, and then they move from flower. They dart, right? They literally dart from flower to flower, and they're racing. So think of a Vata like a hummingbird. You want them to just be calm and gentle. You want to give them more swan-like movements, right? I'm just coming up with visual examples of how you want them to flow through their yoga practice. They flow and pause at each asana, so they should pause at a breathing cycle, reestablish their breath for one cycle or even 2 cycles. And they should hold their asanas for a short length of time. Long, but not so long that they're depleting their strength. So their flow should be slow and gentle, and they should be holding their poses, but not too long. Okay, so a good measurement is 3 breaths. If flowing, do gentle, slow, and fluid transitions. Again, we've mentioned that. Encourages a connection to the body. And quick and erratic movements create dryness, enhances the mobile quality of Vata, and cause a mind-body dislocation, adding to the instability. And synchronize breath to movement. Always synchronize the breath to movement for Vata. Asanas, we have only 2 more slides left. 3 more, including this one. So let me look at the time. Yeah, we have some time. So asanas, for Vata, standing asana, chair is pose, mountain pose, side angle, revolving triangle, parivritta trikonasana, crescent. Then you have Virabhadrasana, warrior, Vrikshasana, tree pose, Garudasana, which is eagle pose, half moon, Ardha Chandra. All of these are good standing poses. Again, all of these have stability in them, right? Their feet are grounded. You know, you're stable. You're not wavering. Inverted asanas, shoulder stand. Child's pose is excellent. Downward dog, which is Adho Mukha Svanasana. A supported headstand, Shirshasana, plow pose, Halasana. Forearm stand, headstand. Again, these are good for Vata. Again, you do it according to your strength. So not everyone can do a headstand. Just because it's good doesn't mean you should do it if you can't, right? So as per the person's flexibility and their age and their skill level. But really the floor and seated asanas are probably the best for Vata because it brings you in contact with the ground, maximum contact with the ground. Head to knee pose, legs up the wall, Viparita Karani. That's a great one for Vata. This is one that I often give my Vatas and they find it really relaxing. Also because when your legs are up a wall, you can't really come out of the pose so quickly, so it forces you to relax a little bit. Bridge pose, supine twist, side plank pose, plank, boat, hero, sitting pose. And then there's wind removing pose, so Pavana Muktasana. That's an important one because it helps alleviate the Vata accumulation in the colon. And then there's cat pose and cow pose. So these are really good for Vata. So again, like I said earlier, age, consider the age of your client, the manner and attitude in which the asanas are practiced, the mind frame, the level of the student, condition of the student. Are they sick? Are they healthy? Are they strong? Even within Vata, there's variations, right? How emaciated and lean are they? Or do they have a little bit more bulk on their body, their structure? Are they stable? Are they clumsy? And remember that asanas help treat a disease, but they're not a complete treatment. So you have to consider diet and lifestyle as well, not just the poses. Consider the environment in which you're practicing. Also pranayam, which is breath control, breath restraint, is also important to add to the asanas because it helps, again, to rein in that crazy tendency for the breath to be irregular or shallow. So pranayam slows down the breathing and balances the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system too. So it's very calming for Vata people. And even though an asana may not be ideal for a specific dosha, doesn't mean one should never do it. You should rather just be more cautious with the posture and tailor it again to your age and your frame and your ability. Oh, that was it. That was fast. I'm going to switch back to the chat frame and see if I've missed anything. I know Dr. Monica is there to help, but I'm just always curious as to what people have written because I can't see it The way my Mac is set up, yeah, it was better on my PC. But anyway, I hope I didn't rush through things too badly, and I hope that makes sense. Again, to drive the point home with Vata, you think of Vata as made up of ether, right? Empty space, and air. So those 20 gunas that we talked about in the previous lecture, you think of those 20 gunas with Vata, and we do things to oppose those gunas. And that's, in a nutshell, how you treat Vata. It's a little more, there's more finesse to it, but that's kind of the broad overview of how to treat Vata. Opposites are curative, and like increases like. So if we give the opposite gunas, then we alleviate the excess Vata. Hope that made sense, and thank you everyone for sitting through my almost 1 hour with you guys. All right, bye everyone.